Between 1929 and 1939, over 15 million Americans lost their jobs as unemployment reached 25%. Banks failed at a rate of 600 per year. Over 2 million Americans became homeless, wandering the country in search of work that had vanished. They needed survival techniques that could sustain life without spending a single cent. They needed methods to find food when grocery stores were beyond reach and soup kitchens were overwhelmed. Here's what life was really like for America's hobos during the deadliest economic collapse in modern history. So yeah, if these stories work for you, subscribe. And I'm curious, what time is it where you are? Comment below. Last week someone from Canada said they listened during lunch breaks. Not judging, just wasn't expecting that. Okay, tonight it's the Great Depression era hobos, but before we go anywhere, get cozy. Like, actually cozy. Pillows good, blanket situation handled, perfect. Trust me on this one. The morning sun casts long shadows across Chicago's financial district, October 29th, 1929. Your eyes open to the worst day of your life, but you don't know it yet. The cotton sheets of your modest apartment bed feel cool against your skin. A far cry from where you'll be sleeping in a week. James Sullivan, that's you, has exactly 8 hours left of normal life. You straighten your tie, grab your briefcase, and head to the bank where you've worked for 6 years. Your savings account has a respectable $400. Your rent is paid through November. You have a girl you're thinking about proposing to. By sunset, none of that will matter. Black Tuesday, they'll call it later. For now, it's just confusion, panic, disbelief. Sullivan, have you seen these numbers? Your boss's face is sheet white, sweat beading on his forehead despite the October chill. It's all going. Everything. The stock ticker tells the story in cold, clicking precision. Fortunes evaporating, life savings disappearing. Your bank isn't just losing money, it's dying right in front of you. What do we do? You ask, but he's already grabbing his coat. There's nothing to do, he says, voice hollow. It's over. By noon, there's a crowd outside. People want their money, all of them, at once. The math is simple and brutal. There isn't enough. Not even close. I'm sorry, sir, the bank is temporarily closed, you tell an elderly man who's shaking with rage or fear or both. That's my life in there, he shouts. And you have no answer because yours is in there too. 2 weeks later, you're sitting on your apartment stoop with a small suitcase. The eviction notice is crumpled in your pocket. Your fiancée that would have been has already left town to move back with her parents. This is happening everywhere, to everyone. You're not special. You heading west? Asks a man sitting next to you, a stranger with weathered skin and calm eyes. He doesn't look homeless, but there's something about him, like he's seen this before. I don't know where I'm heading, you admit. Name's Jack, he says, offering a hand that's calloused but clean. Some folks call me Frying Pan Jack. Been riding the rails since 25. You look like you could use some schooling. And that's how James Boston Jim Sullivan, former bank teller now homeless, gets his first lesson in hobo survival. The thing about becoming a hobo in 1929 is this: you're not alone. These streets are filling with former businessmen, factory workers, teachers, people who did everything right until right stopped working. First rule, Jack says as you walk together toward the rail yard, forget everything you think you know about surviving. Money's worthless if you don't have any. And you don't. Your stomach growls, emphasizing his point. You haven't eaten since yesterday morning. You're thinking about food wrong, Jack tells you. Everyone is. They're looking at grocery stores and restaurants as places to buy food. We see them as places that throw away food. Perfectly good food. I know what you're thinking. Dumpster diving. Gross. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't random scavenging, this is a system, a science, what Jack calls dumpster archaeology. Bakeries dump day-old bread at 6 a.m. sharp, he explains, pulling out a hand-drawn chart marked with times and locations. It's more detailed than some military operations. Restaurants scrape plates between 2 and 4 p.m. and 9 and 11 p.m. Grocery stores discard produce every Tuesday and Friday at closing. You're stunned at the precision. The methodology. This isn't desperate scrounging, it's calculated food procurement. Wait, you say. You've mapped every food disposal schedule within, 5 miles of the rail yard? Jack grins. 5 miles is about right. Walking distance. We don't waste energy and we don't waste time. Time is the one thing we've got plenty of, but energy? That's precious when you're hungry. By November you've made it to Bakersfield, California. The weather's better, but hunger is hunger everywhere. You've lost 15 pounds and gained 1,000 miles of hard travel. Jack's still with you, and he's about to demonstrate your first real hobo food procurement lesson. Watch and learn, he says outside a small restaurant. It's 8:45 p.m. The place closes at 9. Timing is everything. Jack straightens his shirt, patched but clean, and smooths his hair. He looks respectable. Not wealthy, but not desperate either. This, you'll learn, is crucial. Wait here, he says. Watch how I walk in, not through the front. Never the front. You observe as Jack circles around to the back door where a young man is already taking out trash. Jack's approach is careful, measured. He waits until the kitchen worker sees him before speaking. "Good evening, sir," Jack says, his voice clear and dignified. "I'm travelling through looking for work. Would you have any food that's going to waste that I could take with me?" The phrasing is masterful. Not begging. Offering to solve a problem, waste disposal, while maintaining dignity. The kitchen worker hesitates, then shrugs. "Chef was gonna toss these," he says, holding out a bundle wrapped in newspaper. "Couple chicken legs and some potatoes, not much." "That's very kind," Jack says, accepting the package like it's a reasonable business transaction. "Thank you." As you walk away, Jack explains, 7 out of 10 times that works. The key is looking clean, being polite, and hitting them at the right time, when they're closing but before the food gets tossed. Nobody wants to be the one who throws food in a trash can while a hungry person watches. Makes them feel bad. That bundle of chicken and potatoes is a feast. You and Jack eat sitting on your coats near the rail yard, watching the stars come out. What about when that doesn't work, you ask, between bites? Then we move to Plan B, the dumpster archaeology system. Jack becomes serious. This is where most beginners make fatal mistakes. They grab whatever looks edible. That's how you get sick. That's how you die. Survival as a hobo isn't just about finding food, it's about finding safe food. There's a science to it. Bread that's hard but not mouldy? Good. Produced with surface blemishes but solid flesh? Good. Canned goods with dented containers but intact seals? Good, Jack explains. Meat older than 4 hours? Bad. Dairy without refrigeration? Bad. Anything with visible mould or unusual odours? Very bad. The rules are strict because the consequences are severe. There are no hospitals for hobos, no sick days, No one to take care of you if food poisoning hits. Boston Jim, Jack says. The nickname has stuck by now. I've seen men die from eating the wrong garbage. Not worth the risk. Your education continues through November into December. You learn about food caches, hidden storage systems near major rail junctions where non-perishable items can be stored for future use. Never keep all your food in one place, Jack advises as you help him construct a small cache under a railroad bridge. You're using a discarded oil drum with a tight-fitting lid, waterproofed with tar. Stash small amounts in multiple locations. Someone might find one, but they won't find them all. Inside the drum goes hardtack crackers, dried beans, salt, and a small portion of preserved meat, enough to sustain one person for almost a week. I've got 8 of these between here and Portland, Jack says proudly, never more than 2 days' travel apart. The system becomes clear. Hobo survival isn't about day-to-day scavenging. It's about planning, strategy, creating networks of resources. By January 1930, you've learned perhaps the most surprising food procurement method: urban foraging. Jack takes you to an abandoned lot near the rail yard. Cities are full of food people don't recognize, he says, pointing to various plants. Dandelion greens from March through November. Wild onions, you can smell them. Purslane, that succulent plant there, high in omega-3 fatty acids. You laugh in disbelief. You sound like a damn botanist. Jack shrugs. Studied to be one, actually. Then the war came. Then the economy collapsed. Now I'm a different kind of expert. He shows you how acorns can be processed into flour by grinding and leaching with water for 24 hours to remove bitter tannins, and how cattail roots can be harvested from roadside ditches and roasted for carbohydrates. Most people are so disconnected from actual food, Jack says, that they're starving in the middle of potential meals. The plants growing through sidewalk cracks, the seeds falling from city trees, that's survival. February brings you to your first hobo jungle, the name for encampments near rail yards where travellers gather. Here you witness the pinnacle of hobo food preparation, the Mulligan stew system. In a clearing surrounded by makeshift shelters, a group of about 10 men and 2 women are gathered around a large pot, a discarded oil drum with the top cut off. Everyone has contributed something: wilted vegetables, a handful of beans, a few potatoes, a small piece of meat of questionable origin. Mulligan stew, Jack explains. Community cooking. Everyone puts in what they've got, everyone gets a portion. It's democracy in a pot. The cooking process is methodical. A low fire maintained for 3 hours, stirred every 15 minutes to prevent burning. The aroma is surprisingly good, and when your portion comes, measured carefully according to what you contributed, it's the most satisfying meal you've had in months. How do you prevent someone from just taking more than their share? You ask an older hobo who seems to be supervising the distribution. Try it and find out, he says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Hobo justice is swift. You steal food from hungry men, you won't be welcome in any jungle from here to New York. Word travels on the rails faster than the trains themselves. And that's when you begin to understand the most critical aspect of hobo survival. It's not just about individual techniques, it's about community, systems, collective knowledge passed from veteran to newcomer. As March arrives, you've mastered the basics of food procurement. You can identify which restaurants are likely to be generous at closing time. You know which dumpsters are safe and when they're filled. You can spot edible plants in vacant lots that most people walk past without a second glance. "You're getting good at this, Boston Jim," Jack says one evening as you share a meal of foraged greens and salvaged bread. "But food's just the beginning. Winter's ending, which means we can start thinking about more permanent shelter. And I know just the man to teach you." "Who's that?" you ask. "They call him Boxcar Willie, best shelter builder on the Western Rails. Last I heard, he was down in Fresno, building a place that could withstand anything short of a tornado." "When do we leave?" Jack grins. "First train heading south after midnight. Speaking of which, I suppose it's time you learned proper train hopping technique too." Your stomach tightens with anxiety. You've ridden a few trains with Jack already, but always with his guidance, always on slow-moving locals that were easy to board and exit. "Don't worry," he says, reading your expression. "We'll start small, but by the time we reach Willie, you'll know enough to stay alive on the rails." As you prepare your few possessions for travel, you reflect on how much your life has changed in just a few months. From bank teller to hobo, from someone who worried about stock prices to someone who can spot edible plants in an empty lot. From a man who feared the shame of poverty to someone who understands there's dignity in survival. The sun sets over Bakersfield, and you find yourself oddly at peace. Hungry, yes. Homeless, certainly. But no longer helpless. Jack has given you something more valuable than food. He's given you a system for finding it yourself. Tomorrow you'll head south to learn about shelter from Boxcar Willie. But tonight, with a full stomach and a plan for tomorrow, you sleep better than any former banker has a right to in these hardest of times. The hobo way isn't just about surviving. It's about surviving with purpose, with knowledge, with community. And as you drift off to sleep, the distant whistle of a southbound freight calls to you like a promise. There are more lessons ahead, more systems to master. But for now, your belly is full, and the stars above the rail yard shine like silver dimes scattered across the heavens. In a world where money has failed millions, you're learning wealth of a different kind. The freight train's headlight cuts through the pre-dawn fog like a dull knife. You and Jack are crouched behind a water tower at the southern edge of the Bakersfield rail yard. It's March 1930, and the night air still carries winter's bite. "Remember what I told you," Jack whispers. "Wait until it's moving about as fast as a man can run. Too slow, the yard bulls might spot us. Too fast, you'll end up under the wheels." Your mouth is dry. Train hopping isn't just transportation for hobos, it's the difference between life and death, between covering hundreds of miles or being stuck in a town where there's no work and no food. "Which car?" you ask, eyeing the slow-moving behemoth as it builds speed. "Third boxcar from the end. Doors open on the far side. We'll run parallel, then cut across when we hit that switch tower." The train groans as it accelerates. Your heart hammers against your ribs. "Now!" Jack shouts, breaking into a run. You follow, legs pumping, eyes fixed on the passing boxcars. Gravel crunches under your worn shoes. The train is moving faster than it looked, maybe 12 miles an hour, and picking up speed. Jack reaches the tracks first, times his approach, and grabs a ladder rung. In one smooth motion he swings himself up and onto the small platform. He turns, extending his hand. "Commit!" he yells over the train's roar. "Don't hesitate." You're running full out now, lungs burning. The ladder is coming up fast. Too fast? Your hand reaches out, misses, reaches again, connects. Jack grabs your wrist and pulls. Your feet leave the ground, and for one terrifying moment, you're suspended between earth and steel. Then you're on, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. Jack is grinning. Congratulations, Boston Jim. You've just joined the fraternity of the High Iron. The boxcar interior smells of dust and old timber. 2 other men are already inside, huddled in corners with their bundles. They nod but don't speak. Territory is established with eyes, not words. Rule 1 of riding, Jack says quietly as you settle against the wall, is respect. That's their space. This is ours. Rule 2 is silence when needed. Bulls check cars at stops. Talking gets you caught. You learn more rules as the night unfolds. Which cars are safest? Empty box cars, yes. Refrigerator cars, sometimes. Coal cars, never. How to read the rhythms of a moving train to predict stops. The subtle difference between the sound of a regular halt and one where railroad police might be waiting. What happens if they catch you, you ask? Jack's face darkens. Depends on the bull. Some just kick you off. Others... He rubs a scar on his forearm. Others make sure you remember not to come back. Dawn breaks as the train rolls through California's Central Valley. Fields stretch to the horizon, green with early spring growth. In another life, you might have admired the view. Now you're assessing it for survival potential. Which fields might need harvest workers? Which farms might have sympathetic owners? Where could you find water? Fresno coming up, Jack says, peering through the boxcar door. We'll jump about a mile out. Yard's hot there, too many bulls. Jumping from a moving train, you discover, is both simpler and more terrifying than boarding one. Jack demonstrates. Wait until the train slows on an uphill grade. Look for soft ground, toss your bundle first, then jump with bent knees, rolling as you hit. Your landing is less graceful. The impact knocks the wind from your lungs, and you taste dirt and blood where you've bitten your lip. But you're intact, nothing broken. Jack helps you up, brushing dust from your clothes. Not bad for a former banker, he says. You'll get smoother with practice, assuming you survive that long. It's a 2-mile walk to the Fresno rail yard and the hobo jungle that's sprouted nearby. You pass through almond orchards, their branches heavy with pink-white blossoms. The air smells sweet, a stark contrast to the diesel and creosote of the rail yard. Willie's place is near the jungle, but not in it, Jack explains. He likes his privacy. Been building his setup for almost 3 years now. 3 years in one place? Thought hobos kept moving. Most do. Some find a spot and stay a while. Depends on the local law, the work situation, and how well you can hide. The hobo jungle appears first as thin wisps of cooking smoke rising above a stand of cottonwoods near a creek. As you approach, you spot makeshift shelters scattered among the trees. Tents of canvas and tar paper, lean-tos built against fallen logs, even a few structures that look almost like proper cabins. About 30 people are visible, men mostly, with a few women and even a couple of children. They're cooking, mending clothes, playing cards. It looks surprisingly almost normal, like a very poor, very improvised village. Ho, the camp, Jack calls as you approach. No one looks alarmed. A few nod in recognition. Jack, you ugly son of a gun. A tall man with a grey-streaked beard strides forward. Thought you were headed to Seattle. Change of plans, Doc. This here's Boston Jim, new to the road, looking for Willie. Doc gives you an appraising look. Another banker? Bank teller, you correct, wondering how he knew. Your hands, Doc explains. Soft, You'll toughen up or die trying." He gestures toward a path leading away from the main camp. Willie's round the bend by the old equipment shed. Built himself a regular palace. Crazy bastard thinks he's staying. The path winds through scrubby undergrowth before opening onto a small clearing. And there, against the backdrop of an abandoned railroad equipment shed, stands the most ingenious structure you've seen since losing your apartment. It's not large, maybe 8 feet by 12, but it's built with a precision and attention to detail that speaks of permanence. The foundation is raised on railroad ties. The walls are a patchwork of materials that somehow form a cohesive whole. A peaked roof crowned with a small stovepipe completes the unlikely home. A man emerges from the doorway, broad-shouldered, weathered, with intelligent eyes that assess you immediately. He wears clean but patched overalls and carries himself with quiet confidence. "Jack," he says, nodding. "Who's the tenderfoot?" "Boston Jim Sullivan, meet Boxcar Willie, best shelter man on the Western rails." Willie's handshake is firm, calloused. "Former life?" he asks simply. "Bank teller until last October." He nods. No surprise, no judgment. "Crash got a lot of boys. You sticking with Jack?" "Teaching him the systems," Jack explains. "Did food. Thought you might show him shelter." Willie considers this, then nods again. "Could use some help with the North Wall reinforcement anyway. Might as well learn by doing." And just like that, your education in hobo shelter construction begins. Willie's first lesson is surprising. It's not about building materials or techniques, but location. "Site selection," he says, walking you around his small domain, is the difference between a shelter that lasts 3 years and one that doesn't survive its first storm. He points out 3 critical factors you'd never have considered. First, drainage. His site sits 18 inches above the surrounding ground, preventing flooding. Second, wind protection. The equipment shed blocks the prevailing winds from the north and west. Third, concealment. The shelter is invisible from both the rail line and the main road, but accessible through hidden paths. "Most folks," Willie explains, "build wherever's convenient. Then they get flooded out, blown apart, or rousted by the law. A smart hobo spends 3 days finding the right spot, then builds. A dumb one spends 3 hours building, then loses everything in the first rain. The foundation, you learn, is equally critical." Willie has arranged railroad ties in a rectangular frame, with smaller pieces of wood and metal filling the gaps. This raises the living space above ground moisture and provides storage underneath. "Watch for vermin," he warns. "Rats love under-shelter spaces. I keep my food in metal containers and hang them from the center beam. Rats can't climb smooth metal." The wall construction reveals an engineering mindset you wouldn't have expected from a transient worker. Willie calls it scrap layering. Multiple materials arranged in specific sequences for maximum insulation and weatherproofing. Inner layer, he demonstrates, peeling back a section of wall, is flattened cardboard boxes, overlapped like shingles to shed water that gets through the outer layers. The middle layer uses newspaper and rags stuffed into gaps for insulation. The outer layer combines sheet metal, tar paper, and canvas, all salvaged from construction sites and dumps. "You collecting stuff for these walls?" a passing hobo calls out, seeing you and Willie examining discarded materials near the rail yard that afternoon. "Teaching the banker about thermal management," Willie replies. "Banker?" the man laughs. "Good luck. Those boys couldn't build a sandwich, let alone a shelter." "I was just a teller," you protest, but he's already walking away. Don't mind Hanover, Willie says. Lost his farm to a bank foreclosure. Still sore about it. Were you always a builder, you ask, as you help him carry a sheet of corrugated metal back to the shelter site. Willie's expression shifts subtly. Engineer, actually. Denver Pacific Railroad. Designed bridges and trestles from Colorado to California. He pauses. Then the consolidation came. Southern Pacific bought the line, brought in their own people. 22 years of service. Ended with a handshake and 2 weeks' pay. Christ, you mutter. What year was that? 26. Before the big crash. I was just ahead of the curve. He taps the metal sheet. Now I build smaller projects. Over the next week you help Willie reinforce his north wall against the coming spring storms. The work is methodical, precise. Every material has a purpose. Every technique addresses a specific challenge. Water penetration, heat loss, structural integrity. The roof system, Willie explains, is the most critical component. His is peaked, constructed from 2x4 lumber, salvaged from demolished buildings. The rafters are spaced 24 inches apart for optimal support, covered with overlapping layers of tar paper secured with roofing nails and sealed with tar collected from road repair sites. Where do you get the nails, you ask, noticing they're all nearly identical. Construction site down by the new courthouse. Workers drop more than they use. I go by at night with a magnet on a stick. Got about 5 pounds of nails that way. Even the rainwater management is sophisticated. A simple gutter system made from split tin cans directs water away from the foundation and into a collection barrel. Clean water's as valuable as gold, Willie notes. This barrel fills in one good rain. Lasts me 2 weeks if I'm careful. The interior reveals the true genius of Willie's design. A small wood-burning stove constructed from a large tin can sits in the centre of the space, with a chimney pipe extending through the roof. Around it, large tin cans filled with sand form a ring. Thermal mass, Willie explains. I heat these during the evening fire. Sand holds heat for 6 to 8 hours after the fire dies, keeps the temperature comfortable through the night without wasting fuel. Ventilation holes near the floor and ceiling create air circulation, while preventing carbon monoxide build-up. A silent killer in many improvised shelters. Lost 2 good men last winter, Jack comments soberly. Built their shelter too tight, no ventilation. They went to sleep and never woke up. Carbon monoxide's got no smell, Willie adds. By the time you notice something's wrong, you're too confused to do anything about it. The sleeping area is another marvel of efficiency. Rather than a bed that takes up permanent space, Willie has built a platform that folds down from the wall, supported by legs that slot into floor holes. Daytime it's up and out of the way, nighttime it's a bed. Blankets and bedding store in that wall compartment. You're most impressed by the hidden storage systems. Willie has constructed a false floor with concealed compartments for valuables, tools and food supplies. The entrance is disguised with natural materials and positioned to be invisible from casual observation. You expecting thieves out here, you ask, watching him secure a small bundle of tools in one of the hidden spaces. Always plan for the worst, Willie says simply. Out here, your tools are your life. Lose them and you're starting from nothing again. Even security has been considered. A simple alarm system using tin cans and string surrounds the perimeter of his small property. Doesn't stop anyone determined, Willie admits, but it warns me if someone's approaching, usually enough time to decide if they're friendly or not. On your 5th day with Willie, A spring storm rolls in from the Pacific. The sky turns charcoal and wind whips through the trees surrounding the jungle. Most hobo shelters are hastily reinforced or abandoned entirely as their occupants seek refuge in the equipment shed or under the nearby rail bridge. Willie watches the approaching storm with calm interest. Good test for our north wall reinforcement. Inside his shelter, the contrast with the chaos outside is startling. While rain hammers the roof and wind howls round the corners, the interior remains dry and surprisingly warm. The stove glows red, heating the sand-filled cans. The air smells of pine from the burning scrap wood. "Not bad," Jack says, sprawled on a bench built into the wall. "Not bad at all, Willie." You find yourself agreeing. The tiny shelter feels more secure than your old apartment building during a storm. More thought has gone into every square inch of this place than most conventional homes. "Ever think about going back?" you ask Willie as the storm rages. "Using your engineering skills again, I mean." Willie's laugh is without bitterness. "Who's hiring 50-year-old engineers when college boys will work for half the pay? Nah, this is my life now." He gestures around the shelter. "Besides, I still am engineering, just with different materials." The storm continues through the night. You sleep better than you have in months, the combination of physical labor and secure shelter producing a deep, restful slumber. In the morning you step outside to survey the damage. The hobo jungle has been hit hard. Several shelters are collapsed entirely. Others lean drunkenly, their hasty construction no match for the wind and rain. People are already rebuilding, salvaging what materials they can. Willie's shelter stands untouched, not even a leak. "That's the difference," Jack says, coming to stand beside you. "Systems versus shortcuts. Most of these folks will rebuild the same way. Get knocked down by the next storm and rebuild again. Willie built once, built right, and sleeps dry every night." Later that day, after helping several jungle residents recover materials from their damaged shelters, Willie takes you on a tour of the more sophisticated community structures in the main camp. The communal kitchen is impressively organized. A cooking area protected by a tarpaulin roof, with a clay oven built into a small hillside. Several women are already at work there, preparing a communal meal from whatever ingredients have been gathered. "Kitchen's always in the center of camp," Willie explains. "Heart of the community also means the valuable food stores are surrounded by people at all times." There's a tool-sharing station where implements can be borrowed and returned. An improvised message board made from a salvaged cabinet door displays information about local work opportunities, warnings about hostile police or railroad bulls, and notices about which towns are hobo-friendly and which should be avoided. The most impressive community feature is the water purification system, a series of barrels through which rainwater and creek water pass, filtered through layers of sand, charcoal, and fabric. "Doc's design," Willie explains. "He was a medic in the war. Says most hobo sickness comes from bad water. This system's cut illness into camp by half, he figures." As evening approaches, you help Willie seal the final sections of his reinforced north wall. The work is satisfying in a way your bank job never was. Immediate, tangible, directly connected to survival. "You're a quick study," Willie says as you apply the last of the tar to seal a seam. "Engineer in another life?" "Just a teller," you reply, "but I'm learning." Jack approaches as you finish, his face serious. "Time to think about moving on, Boston Jim. Got word the fruit orchards up north are starting to hire. We wait too long. All the spots will be filled. You look at the shelter you've helped improve, feeling oddly reluctant to leave. When? Midnight train to Sacramento, then east to the orchards. Willie nods in understanding. Shelter's good, but work is better. Go. Make some money while you can. That night, as you gather your few possessions, Willie presents you with a small notebook. Its cover made from waxed canvas. Shelter locations, he explains. Every good spot I've built or found from here to Chicago. Which creeks don't dry up in summer? Which rail yards have the fewest bulls? Where to find building materials in 20 cities? You're stunned by the gift. Willie, I can't take your notebook. Not giving it away, just lending it. Find me in Tucson next winter, bring it back. Maybe add some spots of your own. You tuck the notebook carefully into your inner coat pocket. Next to your most valuable possession, a small photograph of your parents. Everything else you own fits in a small pack. As midnight approaches, you and Jack prepare to head to the rail yard. Willie walks with you to the edge of the jungle. Remember, he says as parting advice, building fast gets you covered tonight. Building right keeps you alive through winter, and always check your ventilation. Fire's a friend until it's not. You thank him, knowing the shelter knowledge he's shared might literally save your life in the months ahead. Jack claps Willie on the shoulder. See you down the line, you crazy builder. Stay off the high iron in lightning, Willie replies, a hobo farewell that doubles as practical advice. As you walk toward the rail yard under a clearing sky filled with stars, you reflect on how much you've learned in such a short time. From food procurement with Jack to shelter construction with Willie, you're acquiring survival systems that work without money, without conventional resources. Where to next? You ask Jack as the lights of the rail yard come into view. North to the orchards for work, he says, then east. I know a fellow in Kansas City, Railroad Pete, best train man on the lines. If you think what you've learned so far is something, wait till you see Pete's transportation network. Man can get from coast to coast without spending a dime or getting caught once. Will we need to pay him for teaching, you ask, thinking of the few coins in your pocket, your entire worldly wealth. Jack laughs. Pete doesn't want money, he wants knowledge. Routes, schedules, bull patterns. Information's the real currency out here, Boston Jim. And after what Willie taught you about shelter spots, Pete will consider that payment enough. Ahead, a locomotive's headlight flares to life. Somewhere in the darkness, a switch clanks into position. Your next lesson awaits on steel rails pointed toward the horizon. The apple orchard stretches across rolling hills outside Sacramento, trees heavy with white blossoms that drift down like snow when the wind blows. It's April 1930, and you've been picking for 3 weeks. Your hands, once soft from counting other people's money, are now calloused and stained. Your skin has darkened under the California sun. You and Jack aren't the only former city men working the orchards. There's a professor from Chicago, a car salesman from Detroit, a printer from New York. All adrift in the collapsing economy, all following the ripening harvest for daily wages. 5 more days, Jack says as you both walk back to the workers' camp after a 12-hour day. Then the pruning's done and they'll cut the crew by half. We staying, you ask, though you already know the answer. Nah. Pete sent word he's in Kansas City for the month. Good time to head east if we want to learn the rail system properly. The workers' camp is a collection of canvas tents and improvised shelters on the orchard's edge. You've built a small lean-to using techniques Willie taught you, Raised floor, proper drainage, cross-ventilation. It's nothing like Willie's masterpiece, but it keeps you dry during the spring rains. Other workers have noticed. A young man named Tucker approaches as you start your small cooking fire. "Say, Boston," he says. "Everyone uses your hobo name now. Think you could show me how to fix my tent? Leaks something awful when it rains." You find yourself explaining Willie's principles: site selection, layered materials, water flow management. Tucker listens intently, clearly filing away information that might keep him alive in months to come. "Thanks," he says when you finish. "Been soaked 3 nights running. Where'd you learn all this?" "Guy named Boxcar Willie down in Fresno," Tucker nods. "Heard of him. They say his place could survive a tornado." This is how knowledge spreads in hobo society. Person to person, camp to camp, practical wisdom passed like currency. No schools, no books, just hard-won experience shared with those who need it. You've saved $14 from your orchard work, a fortune in hobo terms. Most of it is sewn into a hidden pocket Jack showed you how to create inside your jacket. Just enough is kept accessible for immediate needs. "Money's useful when you have it," Jack advised, "but never rely on it. Systems work whether you've got cash or not." On your last night at the orchard, you share a meal with Tucker and 2 other workers. The talk turns to travel plans. "Thinking about Chicago," Tucker says. "My sister's there. Might have a place for me." "How are you getting there?" you ask. Tucker shrugs. "Same as I got here. Freight hopping when I can, walking when I can't, paying for a bus if I'm flush." Jack exchanges a glance with you. "Could be we're headed that way too, after Kansas City." "Never jumped a train," one of the other workers admits. "Scared of it, to be honest." "It's not something to take lightly," Jack says. "Men die under the wheels every day, but if you're willing to learn, we're connecting with someone who knows the routes better than anyone." By dawn, your group has grown to 5. You, Jack, Tucker, and 2 brothers from Oklahoma named Elmer and Ray. All headed east, all willing to learn the transportation network from Railroad Pete. The journey to Kansas City takes 11 days. Jack leads, teaching the ASICs of safe train hopping as you go. The lessons are practical, immediate. How to identify a train's likely destination by its cargo and direction. How to time your boarding when the train is moving at the perfect speed. Fast enough to clear the yard quickly, slow enough to grab safely. You learn which cars to avoid. The loaded gondolas where shifting cargo can crush you, the tankers with no safe riding spots, the autorack cars where railroad bulls always look first. You cross the Rockies on a lumber train, huddled in a space between crates of raw pine. The thin mountain air makes breathing difficult, and nighttime temperatures drop below freezing despite it being late April. "Stay awake," Jack warns, as one of the Oklahoma brothers begins to doze. "Sleep up here in the open. You might not wake up." Nebraska brings endless plains and a new challenge. A train with no boxcars, only flat cars loaded with farm equipment. You ride between a tractor and a thresher exposed to sun and wind, using ropes to secure yourselves during sharp turns. By the time you reach the outskirts of Kansas City, you've all mastered basic train hopping. But as Jack reminds you, what we know is kindergarten. Pete's got the doctoral degree in riding the rails. The Kansas City rail yard is enormous, one of the biggest switching points in the country, where trains from all directions meet, break apart, and reform for new destinations. Finding one man here seems impossible, until Jack leads you to a small fire burning under a viaduct near the western edge of the yard. 3 men sit around the flames. One looks up as you approach, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "Jack, you old rail wolf, brought me some students, I see." Railroad Pete doesn't look like a master of anything. He's small, maybe 5'6", with a thin frame and clothes that have seen better decades. But his eyes, sharp, alert, missing nothing, suggest a different story. Boston Jim, Jack introduces you. Former banker, quick learner. Banker, huh? Pete seems amused. Well, the rails don't care what you did before, only what you know now. The introductions continue around the circle. Besides Pete, there's a former factory worker called Detroit Slim, and an older man everyone addresses only as Professor, though what he taught and where remains unclear. Pete's been riding since 15, Jack tells your group. Knows every line from Pacific to Atlantic. Pete waves this off. Just a hobo with good memory. Now, who's looking to learn the system proper? All 5 of you raise your hands. Good, Pete says. First lesson's tomorrow. Daylight's better for seeing what'll kill you. He gestures to spaces round the fire. Get some sleep. Dawn comes early. Railroad. Pete's first lesson begins before sunrise. He leads you through the pre-dawn darkness to a small hill overlooking the rail yard. Watch, he says simply, as the yard comes to life. For 2 hours you observe the intricate ballet of locomotives and cars. Pete narrates quietly, explaining what each movement means, which trains are being built for which destinations, how to identify local switchers versus long-haul freights, the rhythm of yard operations. Most hobos just see trains, Pete explains. I see schedules, patterns, a transportation network with rules as fixed as city bus routes. Know the patterns, you can get anywhere. He produces a notebook filled with meticulous records. Train numbers, departure times, crew change points, security patterns. It's as detailed as a railroad employee's manual. Westbound freights leave Kansas City at 6:15 a.m., 2:30 p.m., and 11:45 p.m. daily, he explains. Evening departure offers the best combination of darkness for concealment and favourable weather. You memorised all the schedules? Tucker asks, impressed. Pete taps his temple. Up here, yes. But I keep records to track changes. Railroads adjust schedules. Need to know when that happens. He points to different areas of the yard. Railroad bulls conduct their most thorough inspections during the 2:30 p.m. departure. Why? Visibility's highest, management oversight strongest. Night and early morning skeleton security crew, much easier to board undetected. The level of detail in Pete's knowledge is staggering. He knows which yard supervisors are likely to look the other way and which will call the police. Which crews check their trains thoroughly before departure, and which do cursory inspections. Information, Pete says, is the difference between riding safely to your destination and getting caught, or worse. After breakfast, a simple meal of coffee and bread shared around the morning fire. Pete moves to the next lesson. Car selection. Most dangerous decision you'll make, he says bluntly. Choose wrong, you die. Simple as that. You walk along the edge of the yard as Pete points out different car types, explaining their characteristics. Empty boxcars are best. Protection from weather, good places to hide, level floor for sleeping. Problem is, they're also first-place bulls, look. Grain hoppers offer concealment but expose you to dust and temperature extremes. Plus, grain dust can suffocate you in tunnels. Gondolas seem good until it rains. Then there are bathtubs with you floating in them. Flat cars with machinery give hiding spots but no protection from elements. The most surprising recommendation comes when Pete points to a line of loaded flat cars carrying heavy equipment. These are safest for avoiding bulls, he explains. Riders can hide behind machinery while maintaining escape routes. Bulls rarely climb up to check. Too much effort. His preferred strategy involves targeting cars positioned 15 to 20 positions back from the locomotive. Too close to engine, crew might spot you, Pete explains. Too far back, coupling jerks can throw you off. Middle's the sweet spot. Refrigerator cars, reefers in hobo parlance, earn special mention. When empty, they're ideal. Good ventilation, insulated against temperature, and minimal railroad supervision because they're not carrying expensive cargo anymore. The education continues throughout the day, moving from car selection to boarding techniques. Here, Pete is deadly serious. This is where men die, he says. Every year, thousands of hobos end up under the wheels. One mistake is all it takes. The technique is specific. Wait until the train reaches 8 to 12 miles per hour. Fast enough that railroad security can't easily pursue on foot, but slow enough to board safely. Run alongside the selected car for 20 to 30 yards to match its speed. Grab the ladder rungs with both hands and pull yourself up in one smooth motion. Pete demonstrates on a slow-moving local, making it look effortless despite his age. When he returns, he has each of you describe the exact sequence back to him. Not something you get multiple attempts at, he reminds you. Practice in your mind until it's automatic. By late afternoon, the lessons shift to perhaps the most crucial skill, concealment once aboard. Getting on is half the battle, Pete says. Staying hidden for hundreds of miles is the other half. He shows you a dark blanket from his pack. Pull this over your body to blend with shadows. Position yourself on the side of the car facing away from stations and yard buildings. Railroad men check visible sides first, if at all. Movement discipline is paramount, remaining motionless during daylight hours, especially when passing stations or populated areas. Noise discipline equally so. A single shout or laugh can give away a rider's position. The most dangerous moments, Pete continues, happen during station stops. That's when inspections happen. That's when bulls walk the train. This leads to his next lesson: escape routes and hiding spots at major yards. Pete's knowledge here is encyclopedic. For each significant rail hub across the country, he can describe hiding spots with pinpoint accuracy. Denver Yard, drainage culvert under track 7 provides concealment during inspections. Chicago South Yard, gap in fence behind equipment shed offers quick exit. Memphis, abandoned signal box near the coal tower can hide 3 men if you're desperate. The final lesson of the day covers something you hadn't considered: the physical demands of long-distance travel. Coast to coast is over 3,000 miles, Pete says. Takes planning. Food and water come first. Pete recommends carrying hardtack crackers, dried meat, and a water container made from a large tin can with a tight-fitting lid. Clothing in layers that can be adjusted for temperature changes, with a waterproof outer layer, usually canvas treated with linseed oil for waterproofing. Basic kit, he says, laying out essentials: knife, rope, matches in waterproof container, first aid, iodine, bandages, needle and thread for deep cuts, blanket that's dark on one side, light on the other, dark for hiding, light for reflecting sun if you're overheating. As evening approaches, Pete introduces you to another critical aspect of hobo transportation, the communication system. Along the pathways approaching the rail yard, he points out small symbols carved into fence posts and scratched onto water towers. These, he explains, are the hobo code, information shared between travellers about local conditions. A circle with 2 parallel lines means safe to camp nearby. An X with a dot indicates dangerous area, hostile bulls. A zigzag arrow suggests get out of here quickly. A horizontal line with 3 vertical marks above it translates to this town is dangerous. These symbols, Pete explains, create a nationwide intelligence network, updated regularly by travellers. Before entering a new town or yard, check the code, might save your life. The next morning brings practical application. Pete has identified a freight bound for St. Louis that leaves at 10 a.m., a relatively safe train with multiple rideable cars and minimal security. You'll ride the first 100 miles with me, Pete tells your group. After that, you're on your own to Louisville. We'll meet at the water tower east of the Louisville yard in 3 days. The approach to the train is methodical. Pete has you watch from concealment as the freight is assembled. He points out bulls' positions, identifies the safest cars, and establishes primary and backup boarding locations. Never commit to one plan, he advises. Always have alternatives. When the train begins moving, Pete times your approach perfectly. One by one, your group boards an empty boxcar about 18 cars back from the engine. The process is nerve-wracking but successful. No alarms, no shouts, no pursuit. Inside the boxcar, Pete continues teaching. He demonstrates how to secure yourself asleep using rope harnesses tied to fixed points, preventing falls during sudden train movements. He shows techniques for blocking sliding doors partially open, enough for air but not enough to be visible from outside. Most important lesson, Pete says as Countryside rolls past the door, is weather management. Changes fast when you're moving 50 miles an hour. Weather, you learn, presents constant challenges requiring specific techniques for different seasonal conditions. Winter travel demands extra insulation and protection from wind chill that can cause frostbite within minutes at train speeds. Wrap your feet in newspaper and rags, Pete demonstrates, then cover with canvas. Creates makeshift boots with insulation and water resistance. Summer requires protection from sun exposure and dehydration with light-coloured clothing and frequent water stops at railroad water towers. Always refill at water stops, Pete advises. Never know when next chance comes. As the Missouri countryside rolls past, Pete shares his own story. Unlike many hobos forced onto the road by economic disaster, he chose this life after returning from the Great War. Couldn't settle, he explained simply. Something in me kept moving. 21 years on the rails now. No family, Tucker asks. Pete's expression shifts subtly. Had a wife in Tulsa, daughter too. Spanish flu took them in 19 while I was still overseas. He stares out the boxcar door. After that, no reason to stay anywhere. The admission creates a moment of quiet understanding. Everyone around you has lost something. Homes, jobs, families. The rails are both escape and destiny. Near Jefferson City, Pete prepares your group for independent travel. He quizzes each of you on route knowledge, emergency procedures, and yard layouts in St. Louis and Louisville. Remember, he says as the train slows for a crew change, giving him the opportunity to disembark, information keeps you alive. Never board a train if you don't know where it's going. Never enter a yard without knowing the escape routes. With that, he's gone, slipping away as the train crawls through a small switching yard. Your group continues eastward, now applying Pete's lessons without his guidance. The responsibility feels heavy. As night falls, you find yourself checking and rechecking the techniques you've learned: car position, concealment, security awareness. A midnight crew change in St. Louis becomes your first real test. Railroad bulls with flashlights walk the length of the train, checking cars seemingly at random. Your group remains frozen in the shadows of your boxcar, barely breathing. The flashlight beam sweeps across the open door but doesn't linger. When the train finally resumes its journey east, Tucker breaks the tension with a whispered joke. Guess they don't care much about catching bankers these days. The laugh that ripples through your group feels like release and triumph. You're learning, adapting, surviving. 2 days later, dusty and tired but successful, your group reaches the Louisville yard. You find the water tower Pete mentioned and wait. By sunset he appears, nodding with approval when he sees all 5 of you made it. "Not bad," he says simply. "Ready for the next lesson?" As the Kentucky twilight deepens around you, Pete begins explaining the intricacies of long-distance route planning, how to navigate from coast to coast using connecting trains, timing layovers, and managing the complex web of America's rail system. The country has shrunk for you, transformed from an impassable wasteland of economic collapse into a navigable network. With Pete's knowledge, no destination seems unreachable, no journey impossible. You think back to October, to the man you were, trapped in a failing bank, watching your life collapse with the economy. That man couldn't imagine surviving a week without money. Now, months later, you understand what Jack told you that first night. Systems matter more than dollars. "Pay attention now," Pete says, spreading a hand-drawn map on the ground. "This here's how you get from anywhere to anywhere in America without a cent to your name." And under the stars, surrounded by men who've lost everything but their will to survive, you lean forward to learn the next lesson. Summer heat shimmers above the rail yard in Louisville as Pete completes your route planning lesson. It's June 1930, 8 months since you lost everything in the crash. Your skin is now deeply tanned, your once soft hands calloused, your city clothes replaced by durable workwear acquired through trade and occasional purchases. "Got word of something interesting," Pete tells your group the next morning. "Big jungle forming outside Spokane. Not just a camp, a real community. Organized. Run by a woman they call Mother Jones." "The labor organizer?" Tucker asks. Pete shakes his head. "Different Mother Jones. No relation far as I know. But she's building something worth seeing. Community systems, not just survival techniques." The prospect of heading west again doesn't appeal to everyone. The Oklahoma brothers, Elmer and Ray, decide to continue east toward New York. Tucker is torn between Chicago and his sister, or this new opportunity to learn. "What do you think, Boston?" Tucker asks you. "Worth checking out?" You look to Jack, who's been unusually quiet. "I know of her," Jack finally says. "Met her in Seattle 2 years back. Smart woman, practical, not a dreamer or a preacher. If she's building a community, it'll be one that works. That settles it for you and Tucker. 2 days later, you're westbound with Jack and Pete, leaving Louisville on a fast freight headed for St. Louis, where you'll connect with the northern route. The journey west is different this time. With Pete's guidance, you travel with a confidence that would have been unimaginable months ago. You know which trains to catch, which yards to avoid, how to time your movement through dangerous territories. "You're not green anymore," Jack observes one evening as you all share a meal beside the tracks in Nebraska. "Starting to look like a proper rail rider." "Still got banker written all over him," Pete jokes, but there's approval in his voice. The northwestern route takes you through Montana's spectacular landscapes, vast plains rising to meet distant mountains, valleys cut by rivers that flash silver in the summer sun. Despite the beauty, you're always aware of the human cost of the economic collapse. Every town shows signs of the Depression's grip. Closed businesses, makeshift shelters, lines for what little relief is available. At water stops, you encounter other travellers, many new to the road, still learning the harsh lessons of survival without money. "Was like that my first year," Pete says, watching a young family struggle to make shelter from canvas scraps near a water tower in Idaho. Difference is, there were fewer of us then. Resources weren't so stretched. You've become a teacher now as well as a student, sharing food procurement techniques with a former accountant from Philadelphia, showing a young couple how to build a rain-resistant shelter using Willie's methods. This, you realize, is another aspect of hobo community. The constant transfer of survival knowledge from experienced to novice. No schools, no books, just life-saving information passed person to person. Information, as Pete likes to say, is the only wealth that grows when you give it away. You reach Spokane in late June. The hobo jungle Pete mentioned isn't hard to find. It's become almost legendary among rail riders. Located in a wooded area where Latter Creek meets the Spokane River, it's far larger and more organized than any camp you've seen. From a distance, it looks almost like a small village. Smoke rises from multiple cooking fires. Structures of varying sophistication are arranged in rough rows. People move with purpose rather than the aimless waiting that characterizes many hobo camps. "Ho, the camp," Pete calls as you approach the perimeter. 3 men step forward, a welcoming committee and security check combined. "Pete, Jack," one of the men breaks into a grin. "Heard you might be coming this way." Information travels faster than people in the hobo world, a fact that still surprises you. "Boston Jim and Tucker," Jack introduces. "Learned food from me, shelter from Willie, rails from Pete. Good men." This simple endorsement from trusted travellers is all the credential you need. The security men nod and gesture toward the camp's centre. Mothers by the main fire. Daily meeting starts in an hour. You're just in time. The jungle's layout reveals intelligent planning. Sleeping areas are separated from cooking zones. A washing area is established downstream from the water collection point. Latrines are dug far from both. Simple pathways connect different areas, and someone has even erected rough signposts. "Place has changed since I was through in spring," Pete murmurs, clearly impressed. "Getting organized." The camp's population is larger than you expected. At least 50 people, including a few women and even 3 children. Most surprising is the diversity. Besides the expected labourers and former factory workers, you spot people whose bearing and speech suggest education and previous status. A doctor, perhaps. A teacher. What might be a former lawyer. The Depression has been a great equaliser. Former professionals now sit alongside lifelong labourers, all reduced to the same basic struggle for survival. At the camp's centre, a large fire pit is surrounded by log seating. Nearby stands a structure more sophisticated than the others. A small cabin built from salvaged lumber, its roof made from overlapping sheet metal pieces sealed with tar. A hand-painted sign beside the door reads simply, "Office." A woman emerges from this cabin as you approach. Tall, broad-shouldered, with iron-grey hair cut practically short and eyes that assess you immediately. She might be 50 or 60, her actual age masked by the weathering of the outdoor life. She carries herself with natural authority. "Mother Jones?" Pete says with a respectful nod. "Railroad Pete." She nods in return, then looks to Jack. "Frying pan. Been a while." 2 years, Jack confirms. "Seattle." "And these would be?" Her gaze shifts to you and Tucker. After introductions, Mother Jones gestures toward the cabin. "Meetings in an hour. Come talk first." The cabin's interior is surprisingly organized. A table holds what appears to be camp records. Notebooks, hand-drawn maps, lists. Shelves made from fruit crates contain medical supplies, tools, and books. Actual books, a rare sight in hobo camps. Most striking is a large canvas sheet hung on one wall, covered with names arranged in columns. "Skill inventory," Mother explains, seeing your interest. "Everyone who stays lists their skills, makes trading easier." She points to various sections: construction, medical, repair, food procurement, education, even entertainment. "Community needs all types," she says simply. "Strong backs are valuable, but so are strong minds." "Former banker," Jack says. You nod, wondering if this is a mark against you in a world where banks are despised for their role in the economic collapse. "Good," she says unexpectedly. "Need someone who understands numbers. Bookkeeper left for harvest work last week." And just like that, you have a role. Mother Jones explains the camp's basic structure as you all settle on wooden crates that serve as chairs. "This isn't charity," she states firmly. "Everyone contributes. Everyone benefits. 4 hours daily community work required from each person. Cooking, construction, security, gathering, whatever needs doing." She shows you a notebook tracking contributions. "After 4 hours, you work for yourself, finding food, improving your shelter, earning trade goods. Systems simple, but strict. The rules are equally straightforward. No stealing from community members, no violence except in self-defense, no hoarding critical resources. Disputes go to council for resolution, 3 warnings for minor infractions, then expulsion. No warnings for major violations, immediate banishment." "Seems harsh," Tucker comments. "Winter's harsher," Mother replies without apology. "Community survives because everyone pulls their weight. Can't carry those who won't try." The system's effectiveness is obvious. Despite the desperate times, the camp has achieved a level of stability that would impress professional organizers. There's food storage, water management, medical care, even educational activities for the few children. "New arrivals get 3 days," Mother continues. "Show your value by then or move on. Not about what you were before, doctor, lawyer, ditch digger, doesn't matter. What can you contribute now? That's all that counts." As she speaks, a young man enters with a piece of paper. "Message from Portland Jungle," he says. "Cannery hiring starting Monday. 50 positions." Mother takes the note, reads it quickly. "Confirmed?" "2 sources. Came by different trains." She nods. "Post it. Relay to Yakima and Missoula camps." After he leaves, she explains, "Information network. Most valuable resource we have. Jobs. Railroad security changes. town attitudes, danger warnings, all shared between camps. How far does the network reach? Pete asks. Coast to coast now. Messages take time. Move at the speed of trains and travelers, but they move. Sacramento knows what's happening in Chicago within a week. The camp meeting proves even more revealing about the community's structure. Nearly everyone attends, gathering around the central fire as evening approaches. Mother Jones conducts proceedings with quiet efficiency, beginning with new arrivals, including your group, and moving through various reports. A man designated as food coordinator describes recent procurement successes and challenges. A woman in charge of water reports on purification efforts. A serious-looking fellow with a medical bag, introduced as Doc Peterson, provides a health update, including a warning about contaminated water in a creek 10 miles north. Most interesting is the information exchange. Travelers who've recently arrived share news from other regions. Which towns are hostile to hobos? Which rail yards have increased security? Where work might be found? What crops will need harvesting when? Idaho potatoes looking good, reports a sunburned man. They'll need pickers by August, paying 75 cents a day plus meals. This information is recorded in the community logbook, creating a constantly updated intelligence network that helps members find work and avoid danger. After the meeting, Mother Jones assigns you to help with the camp's record keeping, tracking food stores, work contributions, and skill exchanges. Tucker, who worked as a carpenter before the crash, is directed to a shelter construction project. Rest today, she tells you both. Start tomorrow. Pete, Jack, staying or passing through? Might stay a spell, Pete says. Been on the move since spring. Jack nods agreement. Could use some still time. You're shown to an area where you can build temporary shelters. Several camp members offer materials and assistance, demonstrating the community's approach to new arrivals. You're not given shelter. You're given the means to create it yourself, along with knowledge from those who've been there longer. By nightfall, you and Tucker have constructed a simple but effective lean-to using techniques learned from Willie, enhanced by local improvements for the specific conditions of the Spokane region. Different from what I expected, Tucker admits as you both settle in for the night. Thought hobos were just men riding trains looking for work. This is organized. Necessity, you reply, thinking of the lessons learned over 8 months on the road. Systems work better than individuals. Jack told me that my first week. Didn't really understand until now. The next morning you report to Mother Jones's cabin to begin your assigned role. The camp's record-keeping system is surprisingly sophisticated, not just tracking resources but coordinating complex exchanges of skills and labour. Tin Can Tom needs shoes repaired, Mother explains, showing you a ledger. He's got skills fixing pots and containers. Doc Peterson needs his cooking pot fixed. Tom fixes Doc's pot. Doc repairs Tom's shoes. Everyone gets what they need without money changing hands. Your banking background proves unexpectedly useful in organizing this barter economy. You develop a simple credit system where work hours are recorded and can be spent on community resources or other members' skills. 4 hours chopping wood equals 1 basic meal, or 1 hour of skilled repair work, you explain to Mother Jones. Medical care costs more because it's rarer. Teaching skills to others earns additional credit. She studies your system, then nods approval. Implement it. We'll test for a week. Beyond the skill exchange, you discover the camp's job referral network is equally organized. When word arrives that apple orchards in Washington need harvest workers, Mother identifies community members with agricultural experience and coordinates group travel. Employers prefer hiring groups, she explains. Less risk than individual strangers. We send 5-10 workers together with experienced leaders. Build reputation for reliability. Next season, they ask for our people specifically. The resource pooling extends beyond food and skills. The community maintains a tool library where essential item, hammers, saws, cooking pots, basic medical supplies are available for checkout by any member who has contributed their required work hours. Clothing distribution operates similarly, with winter coats and boots allocated based on need and planned travel routes. Those heading north receive warmer gear than those moving south. Nothing wasted, Mother notes. Coat sitting unused while someone freezes makes no sense. Perhaps most impressive is the community fund. Small contributions from working members pooled to purchase items that benefit everyone. Recently they'd acquired bulk medical supplies that would have been unaffordable for individuals. What about people who take advantage, you ask one evening as you help Mother reconcile the day's work records. Must happen sometimes. Course it does, she acknowledges. Human nature doesn't change just because times are hard. That's why we have the council system. The council consists of 3 senior community members who hear disputes and enforce rules. Punishments for violations include temporary exclusion from shared meals, assignment to undesirable work duties like latrine maintenance, or permanent banishment for serious offences like theft or violence. Expulsion sounds extreme, you comment. Mother's expression hardens slightly. Winter's coming in a few months. Resources will get scarcer. Discipline breaks down. People die. Simple as that. One person stealing food might mean 3 others starve in February. You witness the council in action when 2 men come to blows over a missing knife. Evidence is presented, witnesses questioned. The judgment is swift. The knife must be returned, and both men assigned to garbage detail for 3 days. Second offence means a week of garbage duty, the lead councilman warns. Third means you leave, permanently. The threat works because everyone understands the stark reality. Survival outside the community is significantly more difficult. The harsh discipline isn't arbitrary cruelty. It's necessary for collective survival. Medical care represents one of the most critical community services, as professional health care is completely unavailable to homeless populations. Doc Peterson, you learn, was a veterinary assistant before the crash, not a physician, but someone with basic medical knowledge that's better than nothing. He's organised a primitive medical system using his knowledge of veterinary medicine, folk remedies, and basic first aid techniques. Most common problems are foot-related, he explains when you visit the medical tent to inventory supplies. Infections from walking, trench foot from wet conditions. Treat early, they heal. Wait too long, might lose the foot, or worse. He maintains a supply of medicinal plants gathered from local areas, willow bark for pain relief, echinacea for immune system support, plantain for wound treatment. When commercial medicines are available through purchase or trade, they are reserved for the most serious cases. Saved 3 lives last winter, Mother Jones tells you. 2 pneumonia, 1 infected wound, would have died without community resources. No individual could have afforded the medicines. Security is another sophisticated system. Guard duty rotates among all able-bodied members, with specific protocols for dealing with railroad security, local law enforcement, and hostile civilians. Everyone does their shift, explains Watchman Mike, who coordinates the security rotation. 2 hours every third day. Small price for safety. Guards are positioned at camp entrances and elevated observation points using simple signal systems, whistle patterns, hand signals, to alert the community to approaching threats. Emergency evacuation procedures ensure the camp can be abandoned quickly if necessary, with predetermined meeting points for regrouping. By your third week in the Spokane jungle, you've fully integrated into the community. Your record-keeping system has been implemented, with adjustments based on practical experience. You've learned new survival skills from various members, each an expert in their domain. You've contributed to shelter improvements, food procurement, and information gathering. One evening, as you sit with Jack, Pete, and Tucker near the main fire, Jack makes an observation that strikes you deeply. Notice something, Boston? You haven't touched money in nearly a month, haven't needed it. It's true. The community's systems have provided everything necessary: food, shelter, security, even medical care when you developed a nasty cough that Doc Peterson treated with herbs and honey. Different kind of economy, Pete adds, based on what matters: skills, labour, knowledge, not pieces of paper that lose value overnight. Tucker, who's thrived in the carpentry role, nods agreement. My sister wrote from Chicago. Things are getting worse there. Soup lines stretching for blocks. People fighting over scraps. Here, everyone eats. Not feasting, Jack acknowledges, but surviving with dignity. That night, in your improved shelter, now a small but sturdy structure built using community-supplied materials in exchange for your record-keeping work, you reflect on the transformation of your understanding. When you lost everything in the crash, you thought poverty meant the end of security, of community, of meaning. What you've discovered instead is that money was only one system for organizing human cooperation, and perhaps not the most resilient one. The hobo communities have created alternative systems for food, shelter, transportation, healthcare, security, even justice that function without currency. Systems based on direct contribution, visible to all. Systems where wealth is measured in skills shared, work performed, knowledge passed on. As you drift towards sleep, you think about writing to your parents. They still believe you're dead or lost, easier than explaining you've become a hobo. But perhaps they could understand this. You're not just surviving. You're part of building something that works when everything else has failed. Tomorrow brings new challenges. Mother Jones has asked you to help establish a satellite camp network, smaller outposts positioned along major railroad lines that will provide rest stops, supply caches, and communication links for travelling members. The work continues. The systems grow stronger, and somewhere in America, the economy continues its free fall. But here, in this unlikely community of the displaced and dispossessed, people have found a different kind of wealth. The Spokane River glitters with early morning sunlight as you finish the satellite camp inventory. It's September 1930, and the first hints of fall colour touch the trees surrounding the main jungle. Nearly 3 months have passed since you arrived at Mother Jones's community, and in that time, your role has expanded from basic record-keeping to helping coordinate the growing network of camps. Numbers look solid, Mother Jones says, reviewing your latest report. 12 satellite locations established. 4 more planned before snow flies. The satellite camp network has become your primary responsibility. Smaller outposts positioned along major railroad lines that provide rest stops, supply caches, and communication links for traveling community members. Each is strategically located a day's journey from the next, creating a chain of safe havens stretching hundreds of miles. Yakima Camp needs more medical supplies, you point out, indicating a note from your most recent inspection trip. And the Missoula outpost reports increased railroad security. They've had to move location twice. Mother nods, making her own notes. Winter's coming. Everything gets harder. The change of seasons looms like a physical presence over the community. Summer's relative abundance is ending. Food sources are becoming scarcer. Temperatures drop sharply at night. Rain falls more frequently. Testing shelter construction. We've got maybe 6 weeks before first snow, Doc Peterson estimates during that evening's community meeting. Need to finish winterizing all shelters by end of month. The winterization efforts have been underway since late August, reinforcing shelters, stockpiling firewood, preserving food, repairing winter clothing. The rhythm of community work has shifted from expansion to preparation. Your shelter, once a simple structure, has evolved into a well-insulated cabin built against the hillside. The earth provides natural insulation on 3 sides, while the front wall, facing south to catch winter sun, is a patchwork of salvaged lumber, tar paper, and canvas, all meticulously sealed against drafts. Not bad for a banker, Tucker jokes as he helps you install a small wood-burning stove fashioned from an oil drum. The design incorporates lessons from both Willie and the camp's collective knowledge: efficient airflow, heat reflection, and most importantly, proper ventilation to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. Check the chimney seal again, you insist, remembering Willie's warning. Rather be cold than dead. The stove installation is part of a larger winterization system. Around it you've arranged large cans filled with sand that will absorb heat during evening fires and radiate warmth through the night, conserving precious fuel. The entire community is transforming as winter approaches. Food procurement shifts from fresh sources to preservation and storage. Teams work in coordination, some gathering late-fall apples and root vegetables from abandoned orchards and farms, others smoking meat or drying fruits over carefully maintained fires. Your banking background has proven unexpectedly valuable in resource management. Mother Jones has put you in charge of the winter food allocation system, calculating minimum nutritional needs, projecting supplies through April, and developing a distribution plan that ensures fair shares based on work contribution. 800 calories per day minimum, Doc Peterson advises as you work on calculations. Below that, people start weakening, get sick easier. Current projections show 1,000 calories daily through February, you tell him, reviewing your inventory records. After that depends on what we can still forage and what comes in through trade. The community's population has stabilized around 60 permanent members, with another 20 or 30 transient residents who stay for days or weeks before moving on. Many are heading south ahead of winter, following the remnants of harvest work into California and Arizona. Others, like you, Jack, Pete, and Tucker, have committed to wintering in the Maine jungle. The decision wasn't made lightly. Winter survival requires resources, planning, and a community willing to share both. Ever wintered outdoors before? Pete asks one evening as your core group gathers around the fire. You shake your head. Closest was a camping trip in Maine when I was 16. Dad called it off after one cold night. It's not just the cold that kills you, Pete says matter-of-factly. It's the wet. Wet clothes, wet bedding, wet firewood. Stay dry, you live. Get wet and stay wet, you die. Jack nods agreement. Lost 3 good men in Montana winter of 27. Shelter collapsed in heavy snow while they slept. By morning, they were frozen solid. These aren't ghost stories meant to frighten. They're survival lessons delivered with deadly seriousness. Winter isn't just uncomfortable, it's lethal to the unprepared. The transportation network changes with the seasons as well. Railroad. Pete leads workshops on winter travel techniques, how to ride safely when ice coats ladder rungs, how to avoid freezing in open cars, which routes remain passable when snow blocks mountain passes. Winter riding's different, he explains to a group of newer travellers. Summer, you worry about bulls and falls. Winter, you worry about freezing to death between stops. He demonstrates how to wrap feet in newspaper and rags, then cover them with canvas to create makeshift boots that provide insulation and water resistance. He shows how to create windbreaks in open cars using tarpaulins or even cardboard. Most importantly, he emphasizes when not to travel. Blizzard conditions, stay put. Below zero at night, stay put. Heavy snowfall expected, stay put. Pride gets you killed in winter. Smart hobo knows when to hole up and wait. As community coordinator for the satellite camps, you travel regularly, inspecting facilities, delivering supplies, and maintaining the information network. Your most recent journey took you to the Coeur d'Alene outpost, where 5 community members maintain a way station for travellers between Spokane and Missoula. Getting more traffic from the east, reports Sadie, the outpost's leader, a former schoolteacher from Minneapolis who now manages the camp with military precision. Folk fleeing Chicago, Detroit. Cities are death traps this winter. No jobs, no relief. Buildings without heat. You update your notebook with her information. How are your supplies holding? Tight but adequate. Need more medical. Iodine, bandages, got plenty of firewood, water sources secure. The conversation is practical, focused on survival metrics. Throughout the hobo network, information is traded with the same seriousness as food or medicine. Railroad security's increased along the northern route, you tell her in return. Union Pacific added bulls at 3 yards between here and Missoula. Switching patterns changed too. Pete mapped the new schedules. You share Pete's carefully drawn schedule chart, which Sadie copies into the outpost's logbook. This information will be passed to every traveller heading east, potentially saving them from capture or worse. On your return to the main jungle, you're accompanied by a new arrival to the network, a former factory foreman from Detroit named Ellis, who lost his job when the automotive plants began massive layoffs. His manufacturing experience has already proven valuable in designing improved stoves for the satellite camps. Never thought I'd end up here, Ellis confesses as you walk the rails together. Had a house, car, savings account. Gone in 6 months. Banking collapse took mine in 6 hours, you reply. At least you had a longer runway. Ellis laughs, a harsh sound with little humour. That's one way to look at it. You're set up in Spokane. It's more organised than the factory I managed. How'd that happen with no money, no resources? You consider this as you walk. Systems, you finally answer. Everyone contributing what they know. Bankers resource management, engineers shelter design, doctors medical knowledge, factory foreman's production efficiency. Take away our money, we still have our skills. Back at the main jungle, you find increased activity. The community preparing for the first major storm of the season, forecast to arrive within 48 hours. Satellites all reported in, Mother Jones asks when you check in. All secure. Coeur d'Alene needs medical supplies. I've noted quantities. You hand over your report. They're seeing more Easterners coming west. Bad situations in the big cities, Mother nods grimly. Same reports from all directions, cities becoming death traps. No jobs, relief running out, people freezing in unheated tenements. The contrast with your own community is stark. Despite having no conventional wealth, you've created systems that work. Food, shelter, medical care, security, even a primitive form of governance. The hobo jungle, once just a temporary stopping place, has evolved into something approaching a functional society. That evening, Mother Jones calls an emergency meeting. The storm approaching is more severe than he initially forecast, potentially the first blizzard of the season. All community resources must be directed toward preparation. Extra firewood gathered and covered, she directs. Water barrels filled before streams freeze. All shelters inspected for weak points. Buddy system in place. Everyone checks on 2 neighbours, gets checked by 2 others. The community mobilises with practiced efficiency. Work groups form spontaneously. Wood gathering teams, shelter inspection crews, food preparation units. There's no panic, just purposeful activity. You're assigned to coordinate the satellite camp communications, ensuring all outposts receive warning and preparation instructions. Tucker heads a shelter reinforcement team. Jack and Pete join a group setting up emergency shelters for any travellers caught in the open when the storm hits. By nightfall, the first snowflakes begin to fall. The wind rises, carrying a biting chill that cuts through inadequate clothing. Inside your shelter, the stove radiates welcome heat as you review your emergency protocols one final time. A knock at your door reveals Doc Peterson, making his rounds before the storm hits full force. "Just checking supplies," he explains, entering and stomping snow from his boots. "Everyone gets a basic medical kit tonight. Iodine, bandages, willow bark for pain and fever." He hands you a small packet wrapped in waxed paper. "Keep it dry, keep it accessible. If someone gets hurt during the storm, help might not reach them quickly." The storm arrives with full fury around midnight, wind howling through the trees, snow driving horizontally, temperatures plummeting. Inside your shelter, the stove struggles against the cold, forcing you to feed it more precious wood than planned. Sleep comes in snatches, interrupted by the need to maintain the fire and check for snow buildup that might collapse the roof. During one such check, you spot a faint light moving through the blizzard. A lantern carried by the night watch, checking for travellers or community members caught outside. Morning brings an eerie stillness. The storm has paused temporarily, though dark clouds promise more to come. You open your door to a transformed landscape. Snow 2 feet deep in places, drifts twice that height against structures. The temperature is well below freezing, your breath creating clouds in the still air. The buddy system proves its worth immediately. 3 shelters have suffered damage. A collapsed section of roof, a door torn free by wind, a chimney blocked by snow. In each case, the assigned buddies discovered the problem before it became life-threatening. One outbuilding used for tool storage hasn't fared as well. Its roof has completely collapsed under the snow's weight. A work crew is already salvaging what they can, prioritizing items essential for survival. Could have been worse, Mother Jones observes as she makes her inspection rounds. Everyone accounted for, no serious injuries. Damage can be repaired. The storm's brief lull allows for essential work. Paths cleared between shelters, roofs reinforced against the coming snowfall, additional firewood gathered and distributed. By midday, when the blizzard resumes, the community is better prepared. The following 3 days establish a pattern. Intense storm periods followed by brief clearings that allow for essential movement and work. The community adapts quickly, developing new systems for these conditions. Ropes strung between buildings prevent people from getting lost in whiteout conditions. Snow is collected and melted for water when reaching the river becomes dangerous. Food preparation shifts to a central location, where one large fire can serve many, conserving fuel. On the 4th day, as the storm finally breaks, a traveller arrives, half frozen and exhausted, having walked the final miles when his train stopped due to snow-blocked tracks. He's quickly brought to the medical tent where Doc Peterson treats him for frostbite and exposure. "Chicago's finished," the man reports when he's recovered enough to speak. No work, no food, no hope. People dying in the streets, cops beating anyone who complains. Came west looking for something better. His story is similar to others you've heard. Major cities collapsing under the Depression's weight, conventional support systems failing completely. The contrast with your community becomes even clearer. That evening, as you make your rounds checking on satellite camp communications, you find Tucker working on an improved snow shovel design. "Thinking about spring," he says unexpectedly. "Little early for that," you reply, gesturing toward the snow-covered landscape. "Winter's just starting," Tucker smiles. "Not planning to plant flowers. Planning to build." He shows you a rough sketch, an expanded community layout with additional structures, improved water management, even small garden plots. "You're thinking long-term," you observe, "beyond survival." "Way I see it, this crash isn't ending anytime soon. Might be years before there's regular work again. Maybe what we're building here isn't just temporary. Maybe it's a different way to live." The idea takes root in your mind. You've been focused on immediate survival for so long that thinking beyond the next season feels almost revolutionary. Yet the systems you've helped create aren't just stopgap measures. They're functional alternatives to conventional economics. Later, you discuss the concept with Mother Jones as you update the community records. Tucker's talking about permanence, you tell her, expanding beyond survival. She considers this without surprise. Natural progression. First you survive, then you start thinking about living. She gestures toward her records. "Why do you think I keep such detailed systems? This isn't just about getting through this winter. It's about creating something that lasts. A permanent hobo community? The idea still sounds strange to your ears. Call it what you want. Community that works without money. People contributing skills instead of trading dollars. Doesn't matter if the economy recovers tomorrow. What we've built here works." That night, as another storm gathers on the horizon, you review your journey from Boston Jim the displaced banker to community coordinator. In less than a year, you've mastered survival systems that would have seemed impossible in your previous life. Food procurement without money, shelter construction from waste materials, transportation networks using freight trains. and community support structures that function better than many conventional towns. The banking collapse that destroyed your old life has, ironically, helped create something potentially more durable. While the monetary economy continues its freefall, you've helped build alternative systems based on direct contribution, practical skills, and community cooperation. As you add another log to the stove and prepare for the coming storm, you wonder what your former banking colleagues would make of all this. They'd probably consider it primitive, desperate. They wouldn't see what you now recognize, that the hobo communities have created something the failed economy couldn't, a system that keeps people alive when everything else falls apart. Outside, the wind rises, carrying the first snowflakes of the new storm. Inside, the stove radiates steady heat. Your shelter stands solid against the elements. Your community prepares with calm efficiency. These aren't just survival techniques, they're the foundation of a different way of living. And as winter settles over the hobo jungle, you find yourself strangely at peace. The journey from bank teller to hobo hasn't been easy, but it's led to an unexpected destination, not just survival, but a kind of freedom you never knew existed. The coldest January in 40 years. That's what the old-timers are saying as the hobo jungle struggles through the heart of winter. It's 1931, and your transformation from James Sullivan, bank teller, to Boston Jim, community coordinator, is complete. The calendar says you've been on the road for 15 months, but it feels like several lifetimes. Morning arrives with brutal clarity, 20 degrees below zero, according to the thermometer Doc Peterson salvaged from an abandoned ranger station. Inside your shelter, the stove has burned down to embers overnight despite your efforts to keep it fed. Your breath hangs visible in the air. The water bucket by the door has a skin of ice. Another day in paradise, you mutter, forcing yourself out of the relative warmth of your blankets to restart the fire. The mid-January cold snap has stretched the community's resources to breaking point. 3 consecutive weeks of below-zero temperatures have consumed firewood at twice the projected rate. Food stores are dwindling faster than expected as bodies burn calories fighting the cold. The satellite camp network has become fragmented as snow blocks rail lines and makes foot travel between locations nearly impossible. Outside, the world is eerily beautiful. Trees encased in ice glitter in the morning sun. Snowdrifts sculpted by wind into fantastic shapes. The river partially frozen into abstract formations. It would be picturesque if it weren't trying to kill you. Movement around the camp is minimal, limited to essential tasks: gathering firewood, melting snow for water, checking on neighbours. Everyone's face shows the same strained determination. This isn't just about individual survival anymore. It's about preserving what you've all built together. You make your way to Mother Jones's cabin for the morning coordination meeting. Inside, the core leadership group has already gathered. Mother herself, Doc Peterson, Pete, Jack, and several others who manage critical systems. The mood is somber. Lost contact with Coeur d'Alene outpost, reports Watchman Mike. No messages for 5 days. Trails impassable. Missoula reports illness, adds Doc Peterson. Sounds like influenza. 3 cases so far. Mother Jones absorbs this information without visible reaction, then turns to you. Inventory update. You consult your notebooks, the most accurate record of community resources. Firewood critical, at current consumption, 3 weeks remaining. Food stores adequate but strained. 800 calories per person daily through February if nothing changes. medical supplies low, especially for respiratory issues, which we'll need if that flu reaches us, Doc interjects. The crisis isn't unexpected. You've all planned for winter hardship, but the reality is still brutal. Priorities, Mother says firmly. First, containment. No travel to or from Missoula until we know what we're dealing with. Message relay only, no physical contact. Doc nods agreement. Second, conservation. Reduce individual fires. Consolidate people into communal warming spaces when possible. Saves wood, shares body heat. Third, you add, food redistribution. We need to maintain minimum calories for those doing essential physical work, while ensuring everyone gets enough to survive. The meeting continues. Adjusting systems that have kept you alive so far. This is the hobo community at its most effective. Practical problem solving without panic or despair. As you leave, Jack falls in beside you. Remember your first night on the road? Back in Chicago? You smile despite everything. Thought I was going to die before morning. Most do, their first winter, but you learned. Jack gestures around at the functioning community. And now you're teaching. The compliment catches you off guard. You've been so focused on immediate challenges that you haven't fully registered how far you've come. From helpless novice to someone others rely on for survival knowledge. That afternoon you implement the new conservation measures. The central meeting area is transformed into a communal warming space, with 3 large stoves providing heat. Surrounding shelters will maintain minimal heating during the day, with resources concentrated on keeping sleeping areas warm at night. Like a prairie dog town, Tucker observes as people gather in the central space, bringing work projects, cooking pots, even makeshift games to pass the time, all huddled together underground during winter. The comparison is apt. There's something primally comforting about the shared warmth, both physical and social. Children play in one corner while adults repair clothing, carve tools, or simply talk in low voices. Someone produces a harmonica, and soft music fills the space. It's a stark contrast to what you've heard about conditions in cities, where isolation compounds suffering. Here, hardship has forced communion rather than separation. The next morning brings news that drives home the value of your community systems. A traveller staggers into camp, half frozen and incoherent with cold. He's quickly brought to the medical tent, where Doc Peterson treats him for severe frostbite and hypothermia. When he can finally speak, his story sends a chill through the camp that has nothing to do with the temperature. Hooverville outside Seattle collapsed, he reports. No organization, no preparation. When the cold hit, it was every man for himself, fighting over firewood, stealing food. Then the influenza came. He pauses, eyes haunted. 200 people, maybe 30 survived. The news spreads quickly, reinforcing the seriousness of your situation. That night, Mother Jones calls a community meeting to address growing fears. What happened in Seattle could happen here, she acknowledges frankly. If we abandon our systems, if we stop working together, if we panic. She looks around the gathered faces illuminated by firelight. But we won't. Because we've built something stronger than just a collection of individuals. We've built a community that functions like a single organism, each part supporting the others. Her words strengthen collective resolve. The next day, despite temperatures remaining below zero, work parties form with renewed purpose, gathering additional firewood from increasingly distant sources, reinforcing shelters, checking on the elderly and ill, You find yourself working alongside Ellis, the former factory foreman, breaking up an abandoned shed 5 miles from camp for its lumber. "Heard you were setting up rationing changes," he says, as you both pry boards loose from the frozen ground. "Calorie banking," you confirm. "Those doing heavy physical work get additional rations, but bank a portion for those who can't work due to age or illness. Everyone stays alive. Work gets done." Ellis nods approvingly. "Production efficiency with human values. Better than any factory I ran." By early February, new challenges emerge. The influenza reported in Missoula reaches your main camp despite precautions. The first cases appear at the eastern section of the jungle, primarily among newer arrivals with less robust shelters. Doc Peterson immediately implements quarantine measures, creating a separate treatment area and assigning specific caregivers who don't circulate with the general population. His knowledge of basic infection control, likely learned during the 1918 pandemic, proves invaluable. Basic principles, he explains during an emergency meeting: isolation of sick, hand washing between patients, masks for caregivers, limited contact. Resources are diverted to medical needs, the best shelters assigned to the ill, extra firewood allocated to maintain healing temperatures, food shares adjusted to provide more calories to the sick and their caregivers. You find yourself working triple shifts, maintaining resource records, coordinating between healthy and quarantine areas, and still participating in essential gathering work. Sleep becomes a luxury measured in hours rather than nights. "You're pushing too hard," Jack warns one evening, finding you still working by candlelight long after most have gone to sleep. Exhaustion makes you vulnerable. Body can't fight illness without rest. You know he's right, but there's so much to manage. The influenza has now affected nearly a quarter of the camp. Food reserves are declining faster than projected. Communication with 3 satellite camps has been lost entirely. "System's only as good as the people running it," Jack reminds you, "and people need sleep." That night, you finally allow yourself 8 full hours of rest. You wake feeling more clear-headed, recognizing the wisdom in Jack's warning. Survival requires sustainable effort, not heroic burnout. Mid-February brings the first hint of improvement. Daytime temperatures occasionally rising above 0, the sun noticeably stronger when it appears. The influenza reaches its peak and begins to recede, though not without cost. 7 community members have died despite all efforts, mostly elderly or those already weakened by months of hardship. Each death is marked by a simple ceremony. Bodies are buried in ground laboriously excavated from the frozen earth. Possessions are redistributed according to community guidelines. Names are recorded in Mother Jones's logbook, a memorial and a reminder. "Lost fewer than most places," Doc Peterson observes after the last burial. "Seattle Hooverville lost nearly 80%. We lost less than 15% of those who got sick, and only about 5% of total population." The numbers are cold comfort to those who knew the deceased, but they validate the community's approaches. Your systems have kept the majority alive through conditions that decimated less organized groups. By late February, contact is re-established with most satellite camps. The news is mixed. Significant hardship everywhere, some locations abandoned entirely, but overall survival rates much higher than in conventional Hoovervilles or urban slums. "Railroad bulls found the Yakima outpost," reports a messenger who managed the difficult journey. "Destroyed everything. But our people had warning from the communication network. Relocated according to emergency protocols. No casualties. March arrives with alternating thaws and freezes. The worst of winter has passed, though danger remains. Food stores are critically low, with many days reduced to minimum rations. But signs of coming spring bring renewed energy to the community. Planning begins for what was once unimaginable, a second year of permanent settlement. Need to start seedbeds soon, advises an elderly woman who joined the community after losing her farm to bank foreclosure. Can grow vegetables on that south slope. Good sun there. Others begin discussing expanded shelter areas, improved water management systems, even small-scale manufacturing of essential items. What began as emergency survival has evolved into something approaching a permanent alternative society. One unusually warm day in mid-March, you hike to a ridge overlooking the jungle. The community has changed dramatically since your arrival 9 months ago. Crude temporary shelters have evolved into more permanent structures. Pathways have become quasi-streets. Garden plots are being prepared in sunny areas. It resembles nothing so much as a frontier town taking shape on the American edge. Jack finds you there, gazing down at the settlement. "Thinking deep thoughts, Boston?" he asks, using your hobo name as he always does now. "Thinking about banks, actually," you reply, "is about money. About what happened when it all collapsed." Jack waits, knowing there's more. "We lost everything that supposedly mattered," you continue. "Jobs, savings, status, security. And then we built something that works better in some ways. Not easier or more comfortable, but more direct, more honest." "No layers between contribution and reward," Jack nods. "You work, you eat, you help others, they help you. Simple as that." You both stand in comfortable silence, watching people move purposefully through the community below. "Got a letter," Jack says eventually. "Friend in Washington says government's finally noticing the scale of this mess. Talking about relief programs, work projects, might be jobs coming." The news should be welcome, but you feel strangely ambivalent. Think people will leave? Go back to conventional jobs if they appear? Some will, Jack acknowledges. Hard to blame them. But others... He gestures toward the jungle. Some might stay. Keep building this. It's not just a survival strategy anymore. It's a different way of living. By early April, the community faces a new kind of challenge. Opportunity. As Jack predicted, government relief efforts are finally expanding. News arrives of work programs in various regions. Private industry shows faint signs of recovery in some sectors. For the first time in months, there are options beyond mere survival. Mother Jones calls a community meeting to address the changing situation. Nearly 100 people gather, the core community plus newcomers who arrived as weather improved. "Each of you has choices to make," she tells the assembled group. "Some of you came here because you had nowhere else to go. Now there might be alternatives. No one should feel obligated to stay if better options appear." A murmur runs through the crowd. Discussion, not discord. "But," she continues, "what we've built here isn't just a temporary shelter from economic storm. It's a community with its own values, its own systems, its own strengths. For those who choose to stay, there's a future here too." The following days bring numerous conversations about what that future might look like. Some envision a permanent settlement evolving into a self-sufficient town. Others suggest a hybrid model, community systems combined with conventional work when available. Still others see value in maintaining the core jungle as a training centre, teaching survival skills to those still struggling across the country. You find yourself increasingly drawn to this last vision, remembering your own journey from helpless bank teller to capable survivor. The systems you've learned, food procurement, shelter construction, transportation networks, community organisation, represent a body of knowledge too valuable to be lost. On a bright morning in late April, exactly 18 months after Black Tuesday ended your banking career, you meet with Mother Jones to discuss your decision. I want to establish a training program, you explain. Formal instruction in all 4 survival systems. Take what we've learned through hard experience and make it accessible to newcomers. She listens without interruption as you outline your vision. 2-week intensive courses covering essential techniques, reference materials documenting successful approaches, even a certification process for those who master core skills. Education was my first career, Mother Jones reveals when you finish. Before the labour organising, before all this, taught school in Tennessee for 12 years. This surprises you. She's never spoken much about her past. People need to learn again, she continues. Not just reading and figures, real survival, how to feed themselves, how to build, how to move through a world that stopped making sense. She nods decisively. Use the northeast clearing for your school. I'll help design the program. By May, your training initiative has taken shape. The first class includes 15 students, some from nearby Hoovervilles, others sent by relief agencies that have recognized the jungle's superior survival rates. The curriculum draws on the collective knowledge of the community's experts. Jack teaching food procurement, Willie, who returned from Tucson as promised, handling shelter construction, Pete managing transportation instruction, and various community members covering specialized skills. Your role is coordination and fundamentals, the underlying principles that make hobo systems work when conventional approaches fail. The Depression didn't just take our jobs and savings, you tell your first class. It stripped away illusions, showed us how fragile our supposed security really was, but it also revealed what's actually valuable: practical knowledge, community cooperation, adaptable systems. As spring advances towards summer, you often reflect on the staggering distance travelled since that October morning in Chicago. The desperate, bewildered banker who lost everything has become something entirely different. Not just a survivor, but a builder. Someone who helps create systems rather than merely serving them. One evening, as sunset paints the Spokane River in gold and crimson, Jack finds you by the water's edge. Year ago, you wouldn't have recognized yourself now, he observes. You smile, acknowledging the truth in this. Still can't believe the things we've built with nothing. When I think about how helpless I felt that first night. Everyone starts helpless, Jack says simply. Children, newcomers, folks who've lost their way. Question is whether they find teachers or just fellow victims. The river flows past, constant despite the tumultuous changes in the human world above its banks. You think about all the teachers you've found on this journey. Jack with his food procurement wisdom, Willie and his shelter engineering, Railroad Pete and his transportation network, Mother Jones and her community organisation, each sharing systems that work without money, without conventional resources. The crash wasn't the end, you say quietly. It was the beginning of something else, something we're still building, Jack nods, understanding. Systems fail, people adapt, new systems emerge. He skips a stone across the water's surface. Been happening since the first cave dwellers figured out fire. That night, as you settle into your now comfortable shelter, you find yourself oddly grateful for the economic disaster that forced this journey. The collapse cleared away a world built on illusion and revealed one based on direct reality, where value comes from contribution, not speculation, where wealth is measured in knowledge and relationships, not paper certificates, where security derives from community rather than institutions. Outside, the spring night is alive with sounds. Frogs calling from the river, wind in new leaves, distant conversations from the main camp. Inside, your shelter stands solid against any weather that might come. Your body, once soft from office work, has been transformed by physical labour into something stronger, more resilient. The hobo systems have done more than keep you alive through America's worst economic disaster. They've revealed a truth that was hidden during times of prosperity, that human ingenuity and cooperation can create abundance even when conventional wealth disappears. As sleep approaches, you reach for the small notebook beside your bed, the one where you record the day's events and insights. Tonight's entry is brief, but encompasses everything the journey has taught you. The railroad taught us that survival ain't about what you own. It's about what you know, who you trust, and how much you're willing to share when times get tough. We built something out here that the government couldn't. A system that kept people alive when the whole country was falling apart. You close the notebook and settle back, listening to the river's distant murmur. Unlike your comfortable bed in Chicago that seems a lifetime ago, this simple pallet represents something earned through knowledge and effort rather than merely purchased. As you drift towards sleep, there's deep satisfaction in knowing that whatever tomorrow brings, recovery or continued hardship, you now possess systems that can't be taken away by any economic collapse. The hobo survival techniques of the Great Depression proved that human ingenuity and community cooperation could sustain life even under the most desperate conditions. These methods, food procurement without money, shelter construction from waste materials, transportation networks using freight trains, and community support systems, provided a blueprint for survival that remained effective long after the Depression ended. As you sink deeper into your pillow, remember that even in your most comfortable moments, you're never more than a generation away from needing these forgotten skills that once kept millions alive when the modern world failed them.